All right, TalkTickers listeners, today we are going to be strapping in for a deep dive into Northrop Grumman's Q3 2024 earnings call.
Yeah, they dropped some serious news, so we're here to break it down.
Yeah, definitely a lot to unpack.
For sure.
We've got the transcript, news articles, stock analysis, the whole 9 yards.
We're going to sift through it all.
So first off,
highlight what matters most for you. Yeah.
First off, let's talk about that record backlog.
Yeah.
Northrop Grumman is sitting on a whopping $85 billion.
Huge.
That's more than double their yearly revenue.
Right.
What does this tell us?
I mean, that's a big indicator of long-term demand and stability.
Right.
You know, this isn't just like a blip on the radar. It signifies sustained interest in their products.
Right.
What's particularly interesting is the strength of their international awards, especially in Europe where, you know, defense spending is on the rise.
So for investors, this means potentially secure and profitable investments.
Right.
Especially with international deals.
Absolutely.
Like those ETD aircraft for Japan and some of those radar programs that you mentioned.
Right. And let's not forget about the ammunition contracts for those unspecified international customers.
Yeah. There's a lot of activity happening under the surface.
Yeah, lots of stuff going on.
Okay, so the backlog looks promising.
Yep.
But how did they actually perform financially this quarter?
So they exceeded expectations, reporting earnings per share that are up 13% from last year.
Wow.
Their segment operating margins are also impressive, hitting 11.5%, which is their highest in over 2 years.
So they're clearly managing costs effectively.
Absolutely.
And navigating those pesky supply chain challenges that
I mean, you know,
everyone's been talking about.
Everyone's dealing with that, so it's impressive that they're able to
for sure.
perform.
Speaking of impressive projects,
we
have to talk about the B-21 Raider.
Yeah.
This stealth bomber program, hitting all of its milestones.
Yeah.
And Northrop Grumman is already working on securing contracts for the second lot of production.
They are?
Didn't they already have 100 units placed?
They did, and now they're pushing for even more, which suggests the Air Force might be considering boosting their order to as many as 150.
Wow.
And this ties in with some potential shifts happening with the next generation air dominance program.
NGAD.
NGAD, yep.
Okay, so lots of activity in the air.
Uh-huh.
But what about space?
Right.
Their space division revenue dipped a bit this quarter.
It did, due to the wind down of the NGI program and another classified program.
Right.
But they're not sweating it.
Okay.
They expect a return to growth in this area, and there's a good reason for their confidence.
Is it because they've got their fingers in a lot of space pies?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Their space business is remarkably diverse. They're involved in military projects, of course, but also NASA missions and various civilian space ventures.
That's a smart long-term strategy.
Certification spreads the risk and opens up more opportunities.
For sure.
But what really grabbed my attention was their focus on autonomous systems.
Oh,
this is where things get really interesting.
Yeah, this is they're leading the charge in truly autonomous aircraft. We're talking about planes that can fly entire missions without any human intervention.
Now that sounds like something straight out of a science fiction movie.
It might, but it's the reality of modern defense technology, and they have several of these autonomous aircraft already in operation.
So for investors watching the defense sector, this is a clear signal of where the future is headed.
Absolutely. This is the cutting edge of defense technology.
And with Northrop Grumman at the forefront, it's certainly something to keep a close eye on. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground so far. A massive backlog, solid financial performance, exciting developments with the B-21 bomber, a diversified space program.
For sure.
And a push towards autonomous systems. Right.
What does it all mean?
It paints a picture of a company in a very strong position. They have the financial strength, a full pipeline of projects, and a forward-thinking strategy. But here's a question for you, and for all of our TalkTicker listeners. With all these different pieces coming together, space, autonomous systems, and traditional defense programs, what role will Northrop Grumman ultimately play in shaping the future of warfare?
That's a big question.
It is a big question.
And it's one we'll continue to explore as we dive deeper into the specifics of their Q3 earnings call.
That's right.
Stay with us, TalkTickers. There's much more to uncover.
For sure. Now that we've laid the groundwork,
Yeah.
let's zoom in on some of the specifics from the Q3 earnings call transcript.
Okay.
There were some fascinating details that I think our Talk Ticker listeners will find particularly interesting.
Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah.
What stood out to you from the call?
Well, one thing that caught my attention was the discussion about the Sentinel program. You might recall that this program was recently moved from the Space Division to the Defense Systems Division.
Yeah, it's the big shakeup.
Right.
What's the latest on that?
So it seems the timeline for Sentinel is undergoing some adjustments.
Okay.
Due to that restructuring process with the Air Force. They're still, hammering out the details, but Northrop Grumman seems confident about navigating those changes.
Okay.
In fact, they've already factored the anticipated adjustments into their financial outlook.
So they're staying flexible, adapting
Right.
to the evolving situation, which is good.
Exactly.
Shows they're being proactive.
Yeah.
And then there's the Glide Phase Interceptor, or GPI.
Oh, yes, the hypersonic missile killer.
Right.
That sounds pretty crucial in today's world.
Absolutely.
What can you tell us about it?
Well, the contract structure itself is quite interesting.
Okay.
It utilizes an incremental funding approach.
Which means the Missile Defense Agency is essentially giving Northrop Grumman the green light to proceed step by step.
So like a series of checkpoints.
Exactly.
They assess progress at each stage.
Right?
And then release more funding if everything's on track.
Precisely. And this down select is significant because it shows a high level of confidence from the Missile Defense Agency in their design and capabilities.
It sounds like they're betting big on Northrop Grumman to deliver on this critical program.
Absolutely.
And this program also has international implications.
Yes.
As it's a collaboration between the U.S. and Japan.
That's right.
So it's not just about national defense, but also about strengthening alliances and partnerships.
For sure.
Adds a whole other layer of significance to the project.
Absolutely. Now, shifting gears back to the financial side of things.
Okay.
There was a lot of talk about the ongoing supply chain challenges that are, impacting every industry these days.
It seems like everyone's grappling with those issues right now.
A big problem.
How is Northrop Grumman handling it?
Remarkably well, I think, considering the circumstances. They're facing the same capacity and productivity issues as everyone else.
Right.
But they're taking a very proactive approach to mitigating the impact.
What kind of approach?
Right. So for one thing, they've got dedicated teams working directly with their top suppliers to identify and address any bottlenecks in the chain.
Okay.
They're also investing heavily in their workforce training programs to boost productivity and ensure new employees are up to speed quickly.
So they're attacking the problem from both ends,
Right.
smoothing out the supply chain, and maximizing their internal efficiency.
For sure. And it's clearly paying off as evidenced by their strong financial performance this quarter.
Right. They're not just talking the talk.
Exactly.
They're walking the walk.
They are indeed. And that leads to another interesting point. Okay.
That was raised during the call. The potential for margin expansion across different segments of their business.
Now, that's something investors always love to hear.
Right.
Tell me more about that.
Well, they see opportunities for margin growth in 3 of their 4 segments.
Okay.
Defense systems, mission systems, and space. The drivers vary, of course.
Right.
But it boils down to a combination of favorable macroeconomic trends, strong program performance, and continued cost discipline.
So essentially they're hitting on all cylinders, making the most of the current environment.
In a nutshell, yes. But there's always a wild card in any financial forecast.
Yeah.
And in this case, it's the upcoming election.
Oh, yeah. The big question mark hanging over everything. How do they see that playing out?
Interestingly, they don't anticipate any drastic shifts in defense priorities, regardless of who wins.
They believe the focus on deterring and defending, as outlined in the National Defense Strategy, will remain consistent.
So less about political wins and more about the overall threat environment.
Exactly. They see that as the primary driver of defense spending, which bodes well for Northrop Grumman's portfolio. Their capabilities are very much aligned with those national security priorities.
Right. National security is a long-term game.
Right.
Not something that flips on a dime based on who's in the Oval Office.
Now, there was one more intriguing tidbit from the call that I wanted to highlight. the long-term growth trajectory of their space division. We talked about that dip in revenue earlier.
Yeah.
But what about the bigger picture?
Yes, let's talk space.
All right.
I'm always fascinated by that aspect of their business.
Yeah.
They seem to be playing in a whole different league up there.
They are, and they're projecting a strong return to growth after 2025, potentially in the mid-single-digit range.
Okay, so a bit of a slowdown now,
Right.
but then back to a healthy climb.
Right.
What's driving that optimism for the future?
Well, it goes back to that diversity we discussed earlier. Their space business is incredibly well-rounded.
Okay.
They're involved in everything.
Right.
From military and intelligence programs to NASA missions to those civilian space ventures you mentioned.
Okay, so it sounds like they're playing the long game in space.
Exactly.
Not getting rattled by short-term
That's right.
fluctuations.
And that kind of strategic thinking
Yeah.
is what makes Northrop Grumman such a compelling company to analyze. They're not just reacting to the market.
Yeah.
They're actively shaping it with their investments and their vision for the future.
Well said. And speaking of shaping the market,
Yeah.
we can't wrap up this deep dive without circling back to their investments in autonomous systems.
Right.
That seems to be a major theme
It is.
running through everything we've discussed today.
Yeah, it is. And it's where their vision for the future really shines through.
Absolutely. It's like they're pulling ideas straight out of science fiction,
Right.
but making them a reality right before our eyes.
Think about it. Truly autonomous aircraft, advanced satellite systems, unmanned vehicles for underwater missions.
Yeah.
They're pushing the boundaries of what's possible in multiple domains.
It's mind-blowing to consider the potential implications
It is.
of all these advancements.
Yeah, and they're not just dabbling in
Yeah.
these technologies.
Right.
They're establishing themselves as leaders
Right.
in the field.
And that's a crucial point
Yeah.
for our TalkTicker listeners to understand.
Yeah.
Northrop Grumman isn't just following trends. They're setting them.
That's right.
That kind of forward-thinking approach is what sets them apart from
Yeah.
many other companies in the defense sector.
It does.
So after all this analysis,
Right.
what's the big takeaway for our listeners? What should they be watching for in the coming months and years as Northrop Grumman continues to evolve?
I think the key is to keep your eye on how they continue to leverage their strengths
Cool.
in those three key areas: traditional defense, space, and autonomous systems.
Yep.
It's the convergence of those capabilities where the real magic happens.
Right.
And where they have a unique opportunity to shape the future of warfare.
It's like they're writing a whole new playbook for
Right.
how national security and defense will be conducted in the years ahead.
Exactly. And the implications extend far beyond just the defense industry.
Right.
This has the potential to reshape global security as a whole. And that's something we all need to be paying attention to.
Well said. So if you want to understand where the world is headed, Northrop Grumman is definitely a company you need to keep on your radar.
Absolutely. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
there's one more thought-provoking question I'd like to pose to our listeners.
Ooh, I love a good cliffhanger.
Right.
Hit me with it.
Given their dominance in these key areas,
Okay.
traditional defense, space, and autonomous systems, how will Northrop Grumman navigate the complexities and potential challenges of operating in those increasingly interconnected domains?
That's a great question. It's not just about technological advancement.
Right.
It's about managing the integration and interplay of all those different systems
Yeah.
and ensuring that they work together seamlessly and effectively.
Precisely. And it's a challenge that will require strategic thinking,
Right.
innovation, and a willingness to adapt to the evolving landscape of global security.
That's a lot to ponder.
It is.
But that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating.
Right.
We're not just looking at numbers and contracts.
Yeah.
We're exploring the future of defense and security.
And that's what sets TalkTickers apart from other earnings call podcasts.
Right.
We're trying to connect the dots and understand the bigger picture, the forces shaping the world around us.
Exactly. We're not just giving you information.
Right.
We're giving you the tools to think critically about what it all means and how it might impact your own investment decisions.
And hopefully that empowers our listeners to make more informed choices,
Right.
whether they're seasoned investors, industry professionals, or just curious citizens trying to make sense of the world.
Well said.
All right.
Now, let's take a moment to process all that information.
Okay.
And when we come back, we'll wrap things up with a closer look at Northrop Grumman's financial performance and their capital allocation strategy for the future.
Sounds good.
Stay tuned, TalkTickers. Welcome back, TalkTickers listeners. It's time to wrap up our deep dive into Northrop Grumman's Q3 2024 earnings call. And we're going to do that by taking a look at their financials and their capital allocation strategy.
Yeah, they had a particularly strong showing in terms of free cash flow, generating $730 million in Q3, which aligns perfectly with their projections.
Okay, so the cash is flowing nicely.
It is.
Which is always a good sign.
Absolutely.
For investors, what are they planning to do with all that cash?
Well, they're sticking to their shareholder-friendly capital deployment strategy,
Okay.
which means returning approximately 100% of their free cash flow to shareholders next year.
Right.
This will be done through a combination of dividends and share repurchases.
That's music to any investor's ears. They're investing in growth, rewarding shareholders, and managing their financials effectively.
Yeah, it's really kind of a trifecta of wins.
Yeah.
And their long-term outlook for free cash flow growth is even more impressive.
Okay.
They're projecting growth of over 20% next year.
Wow.
Which is fueled by several key factors.
Break it down for us. What are these factors driving that impressive growth?
Well, firstly, there's the continued margin expansion we talked about earlier.
Right.
They're becoming more efficient and profitable, which naturally leads to increased cash flow.
Right.
Secondly, they're expecting a lower level of capital expenditures next year as they wrap up some of their major investments.
Okay, so they're reaping the benefits of those past investments.
Right.
Which frees up more cash for other priorities, like returning value to shareholders.
Exactly. And let's not forget the potential boost from lower R&D cash taxes and higher CAS recoveries.
Okay.
It all adds up to a very positive outlook for Northrop Grumman's financial future.
Yeah, it seems like they've found that sweet spot. Strong financials, robust growth, and a shareholder-friendly approach.
Yeah, for sure.
The winning combination that's sure to attract attention from investors.
Absolutely. Northrop Grumman is firing on all cylinders and is well-positioned for continued success.
Yeah.
They're a company that investors should definitely keep on their watch list.
Well, TalkTickers listeners, we've covered a lot of ground today. From record backlogs to international deals, from space ventures to the future of autonomous warfare. Northrop Grumman is a company on the cutting edge of innovation. And their Q3 earnings call gave us a glimpse into their ambitious plans for the future.
They're not resting on their laurels. They're constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible in defense technology while delivering strong financial performance and rewarding their shareholders. Northrop Grumman is a company to watch, that's for sure.
Well said. And for our listeners who want to delve even deeper, we'll be sure to include links to all the sources we used in this episode in the show notes. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Northrop Grumman, and until next time, keep your ears tuned to TalkTickers for more insightful analysis of the world of earnings calls.
Yeah, keep those thinking caps on. There's a lot to consider as we navigate the rapidly evolving landscape of defense technology and global security.